Do you remember, chums, earlier this year, you do remember, of course, that Prince Harry decided alongside his wife, the former cable TV actress Meghan Markle, they were going to change their names, their looks or whatever. And suddenly it all exploded and came into the public domain. Where did all of this come from? And more importantly, why was it stopped? As ever, let me explain. Morning, good to see you. Thank you so much for joining me today, and welcome one and all, as I like to say. And we are in, as you know, one of my favourite spots here in London. It's a beautiful traditional English pub, and it's just so nice when you go inside because it is exactly how it would have been, more or less, all of those years ago. It's fascinating, isn't it, to think the people who sat at the bar and yes, and chewed the day away, as it were. I love those sort of stories, though, don't you? And thank you, by the way, for your lovely comments regarding the splendid actors Kenneth Moore, Richard Burton, and the story about, of course, how they, lost an opportunity, some people might say. Some people might say, of course, that Prince Harry and Meghan Markle have lost numerous opportunities, and rightly so, chums, let's be blunt. The problem that you've got, as you know, with these two is they can't stick to a lane, and there lies the problem, in my opinion, right? Because whichever version you're doing, and what's interesting here, I find, is that when you look, for instance, at Meghan Markle's latest sit-down with Fortune magazine, and you think, well, what was that about? I think that the woman was, what was the point? She never asked her any leading question. Why did you, Meghan was allowed to say she was a success. The woman is not a success. Just because you sell a few bits out doesn't mean you're a mega success. But of course, when you look at the figures, and this is the interesting thing, and this is the point if I was somebody like Vogue magazine or Tatler or anybody else looking to invest in Meghan, look at the low viewing figures of that. It got so much traction, so much publicity, and yet it hasn't broken into any digits at all, really. That tells you a lot. People are over, they want the decline, they're not necessarily interested in what your next plan is. Of course, the next plan was to hijack the name Spencer. It wasn't good enough to be a Windsor or a Sussex. And as I told you before, this really was part and parcel of the fallout with none other than Drew Barrymore, simply because Drew Barrymore could not believe, for instance, that Meghan Markle was now changing her name, and she had to announce it in the middle of that programme, which was a farce in itself, right? I mean, you see, she announced it on a cooking show, but it was a joke. Everybody thought, no, you're always going to be known as that. As I've said to you before, in certain parts of the world, Kate Middleton will always be known as Kate Middleton because that was the name that stuck. I naturally prefer Catherine, Princess of Wales. I think it's, that's the right title, but that's what suits it. But it just depends on where it lands. You couldn't imagine Madonna using a second name now, could you? It just wouldn't work. People just say Madonna, that's the deal. Now, of course, as you know, they desperately tried and had a meeting and discussed with Earl Spencer, Diana's brother, about whether they could take on the moniker. Not only is it insulting, I thought this was in terribly bad taste, given His Majesty the King, his father, is going through all those health battles. But to do that and let that get out publicly is very, very insulting indeed. But very quickly, Earl Spencer shut it down. And I have that on excellent authority, as I'm sure you understand. And where this is really interesting is, and this is going to be more apparent as you read more about this in the coming days, of course, is the fact that clearly they had their own ideas for the Spencer name. Now, for all of us who remember, I remember calling Princess Diana Spencer so many times because when we were at school, that was her name, Lady Diana Spencer. It's the first time I'd ever really heard the words Lady Diana. You see what I mean? It's what sticks in your head, isn't it? But of course now things move on, and the nieces of the Spencer family are launching, and take note of this, Meghan, because I know you're watching, but they're launching, of course, their own luxury brand. It starts with this wonderful exclusive designer handbags. Way too much money for you and I if you wanted one. I'm talking to you, sir, of course. But this is because they will be using the Spencer name, the brand. Now, not only are they going to be taking on the big cheeses of like Chanel and Gucci and stuff like that, but this is going to be very successful. I can tell you exclusively already, most of the major stores around the world, the big ones, the ones that we like to wander in, have a look at, maybe buy a carrier bag and leave quietly, you know what I mean? Well, they all want to be part of this. There's going to be lots of exposure, lots of publicity, lots of glossy photo shoots. And that, I was told, from an excellent source, is the reason why they certainly didn't want to branch the name out. So while people were sort of saying, oh, well, obviously they didn't want to defend, etc. There was an element of that. But behind the scenes, very shrewdly and very cleverly, these two beautiful young ladies are beavering away to make sure that they make a success of their business. And on this instance, they're not using somebody else's name, it's their own name to make success with. You see how it works now, Megan? Neil Sean in the very heart of London.